Welcome, everyone.
Welcome
to another episode of
the Super Data Brothers Super Data Show.
That's right. I am Ryan.
And I am Eric.
And we are real-life brothers who work in the data and analytics industry. Eric,
true.
What do we got teed up for the people today?
Well, today is 5 signs that your data project is doomed. Right?
Doomed.
So it's doomed. So I'm excited for today's show because, one, this is the first show where it's just me and you, Ryan, for a little while.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed those shows because it's a bit more casual. I mean, we are real-life brothers, so we do talk to each other pretty well. And also, it's an interesting topic because we all have data projects, and we've all seen doomed data projects, and you've got stories, I've got stories, and we've learned lessons about how to avoid it.
Absolutely.
And also, as we're talking, if you've in the comments want to pipe in with your stories or examples or questions about stuff, then feel free to pipe in. Oh, you're back, Ryan. Your camera went out for a second.
Yep. Yeah. I had to open Elgato Camera Hub in order to
Gotcha.
make it work. So I was frozen there for a little while. But anyways, I'm back. Yeah. So are we talking Doom, the Doom of Valeria, or Mount Doom? I think Dr. Doom.
We're talking Dr. Doom. What about MF Doom?
Yeah. Yes.
Are we talking MF Doom?
Or we'll be giving you tips on how to play the Doom PC game.
Yeah, Doom Eternal.
All right.
Okay. One thing before we hop in to the main topic. I know a lot of people that the timing last week was a little off. So I know not many people were able to tune in because it was Friday, not our usual time. But last week we talked all about with Sanjeev Mohan LLMs. And for that show, we actually fed the transcripts of Super Data Show to an LLM that's running locally on my machine. And I've got that running right now. So as we go through, if anyone has any questions they want to ask the Super Data Brothers Super Data Bot, large language model, let us know, and we can see how good of an answer it is. So about any of the stuff we talk about, and we can see how good it summarizes the opinions of Eric Dolly and Ryan Dolly, the Super Data Brothers. So
absolutely. Cool. So let's get things kicked off. Now, before we do, of course, remember, this is a live show. It's more fun for you and it's more fun for us if you get those comments and reactions into the chat. So let's look alive today, people.
Yeah. In fact, if you're tuning in from somewhere, why don't you let us know where you're tuning in from?
Yeah, we'll give you a shout out.
We'll give you a shout out on screen. All
right. So the 5 signs that your data project is doomed. Doomed from the start, first of all. These are the things you should look out for at the beginning of the project to tell that you're in hot water already.
Yep. All right, let's bring up the slide deck.
Toronto. All right,
Welcome.
Is it, are you guys getting hammered with that wildfire smoke? Like here in the Detroit area, we're not supposed to go outside.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as bad as the,
it's not as bad
of like
New York.
Yeah, New York. It looks like it looks like the game Diablo 4 just released. And it looks like everyone's
literally in
you're living inside the Diablo 4 world in New York.
Yeah. All right, let's get rolling.
All right. Add to stream. All right. 5 signs that your data project is doomed.
Doomed. All right, let's get into it.
All right, let's roll.
So, sign number 1. And while we're going through this, if you have funny stories about doomed data projects, go ahead and let us know.
Yeah. See, it's not as bad as New York, but the gloom of Mordor is in the air.
We're going through all the nerd references here.
Yeah, geez.
All right. So sign number one: you did not begin your project with the end in mind. This is something that we say all the time here on Super Data Show. You have to begin with the end in mind. And if you look at the guests we've had on, you go back to the Chris Tabb episode, for example. This was really, if I were to sum up kind of a lot of Chris Tabb's wisdom, I would put it into this one sentence, right? You have to begin with the end in mind. So is your project actually, has it been aligned to a real business strategy? Like, do you know the value that the project is going to deliver? Has it been quantified somehow? A lot of times data projects start with very nebulous, maybe technical outcomes that people have in mind or something like that, and not defined business value, right? Do you have success metrics, clear objectives? Have you overlooked user requirements? Fundamentally, what we believe here at Super Data Show is you need to start from the end user experience and work backwards, right? So what are they trying to accomplish? What user experience will give them that? And then you work into your tech and your project plans and your pipelines and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. One interesting thing. So not begin with the phrase is begin with the end in mind. It's funny where we first heard that from is because our mother, before she retired, was a school teacher, right? And this is like when planning like a project for like a third grader, this is one of the things they teach. Begin with the end in mind, right? Which kind of harkens back to like something that we often say is like the simple stuff can work, right? Like if you just like sometimes just like start with a simple concept and like actually try, and you usually get a pretty good result. So if it works for a third grader, right, it should work when talking to the top 3 executives and trying to get something done. So
yeah, yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you a story of in ye olden times when I was a BI developer on a BI team. I can think of a time when I didn't really. We weren't really working this way, right? Like first of all, we didn't work backwards from user requirements and needs. We basically had the standard way we did things and we just applied that to everything. And so this was in kind of the OLAP Cube era, Cognos, Transformer, and PowerPlay. And I was working with the project management office and we did not have this stuff lined up, right? We didn't have clear project objectives that were tied to business value. The project objective was deliver the project management cube, right? That was the objective of the project. And so I ended up working with just one person on the project for about 6 months. So we built out a Kimball style data warehouse or data mart. And then we had this OLAP cube and a relational model. We had both a relational and dimensional model built on top of it in Cognos was the tool we were using at the time. And we went and delivered it. And I can remember the sinking feeling I had when I was in a room full of project managers and I'm showing them the cube and they're all kind of like, oh yeah, that's neat. Yeah. Yeah. And then the head of the project management office was like, so this is optional. If you guys want to use this to do your reporting, that's fine. Or you can just keep using your own personalized one-off spreadsheets. And that's when I realized that we had not begun with the end in mind. And that was a colossal screw up that wasted 6 months of my life. It didn't feel very good. And I will tell you, if you looked at the audit information for how much that cube was actually used, it was not hardly used at all. Maybe 2 out of 30 project managers embraced it. But that was because we hadn't really figured out what do PMs need and then worked backwards into the user experience that would have delivered that at that organization. What we did instead was we just took what we had and what we knew and we just assumed it would work, right?
So one thing I think we can talk about as we go on, like what you could have done to avoid such a fate, right?
Yeah.
And I think our next points will probably elucidate that point.
Yeah, they will. I mean, some of these things coming up for sure will tell you how to avoid that fate. But I will. I mean, I think the technical term for it was it sucked. Was
Yeah.
what I would say, that experience. So, okay, so not beginning with the end in mind. If you are not beginning your project with the end in mind, your project is likely doomed.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got next?
All right.
Yes.
Making decisions based solely on the technology.
I think that last story I told, there was an element of that involved, right? Where we kind of, we would just like, oh, OLAP cubes are great. We have lots of OLAP cubes. Let's just build these guys an OLAP cube.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really, I see this really commonly actually, is like people will buy a piece of tech and then they'll ask themselves, okay, what do we do with this thing? Right. Especially, in situations like, and I know we'll talk about this later on today too, but if you think about, say, the data lake frenzy of 2014 to 2018, there was a lot of decision making based solely on technology. So, there's kind of multiple aspects of this. There's, are you choosing to do things like use tech features just because they exist or because you as a developer or you as a data team think they're cool? Versus actually having an identified business need and a value that the technology can deliver. I think an important piece is, ignoring integration with needs, existing systems and processes. I mean, that's something I see people do a lot is they're like, well, we're going to use this new piece of technology.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to roll it out. And then it's like, well, how, when we think about what, like the conversation that's going on in the data industry lately around data quality and data modeling and metrics and all this stuff that we used to do that we quit doing and are now coming back into fashion. I mean, you think a lot of the situation we found ourselves in with this total data mess that data teams are now trying to clean up was driven by making decisions based solely on technology, and not thinking about the broader picture and designing an overall data program that makes sense.
Oh, I just thought of a new slogan.
What's that?
Turn your data mess into a data mesh.
There you go.
That just popped in my head.
I think Mike DeGoyce and I did a presentation called "Can Data Mesh Solve Your Data Mess?" about 2 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, I think we did. So, I mean, Eric, you oversee a BI and analytics team. How do you think about making these types of decisions?
Well, as far as deciding based on the technology instead of what you need.
I mean,
obviously, there's always a desire, because there's something called the rule of cool, where you want to show cool things, right? You want to wow somebody, so you go for the newest tech, but one thing at our organization, a lot of people have moved past the EDW. Well, not moved past, but they're not focusing on the EDW, but we still have a strong central EDW that we put all of our information into, right? All of our data, and that has been such a strength and such an asset going forward, especially as we're talking about the large language model stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's tempting to make a decision just to implement something new. And earlier you talked about integration needs, right? So one thing is, any large organization, I'm a university, we're a very large organization, is you have all these branching departments and all these different technological needs. And if you don't have a plan, right, an overall plan for your data, and two, visibility into what people are actually doing, despite your best efforts, you will find that your organization will in fact implement all of these different technologies, right? And eventually that will bite you in the butt, because at some point someone's going to look at okay, so we have four approval systems for getting sign off on X, Y, or Z. We have 4 reporting systems, right? So all these different departments has made decisions based on just oh, this is a cool tech. Oh, let's do it. Oh, this specific piece of tech will solve our problems without an overall organizational plan. Right?
It's crazy to me. A couple things that really stood out to me about what you said there. So the first one is you talked about your EDW, and it's crazy to me how neglected very useful EDWs have become at a
Oh, yeah.
number of the companies I've worked with, where it's just so common that someone will be desperate for some data that exists in the EDW, but they have no idea that it's
Uh-huh.
there, and like maybe they don't have good access to it. Like their only access to it would be through a BI tool that they don't know how to use or something like that. Or, you have no data catalog, you have no metadata, it's not searchable. It's very frustrating to see that because the EDW, I continue to believe, is a very important piece of an overall data strategy.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you're moving into a world with, say you're embracing data mesh, right? You may still find, and I've had conversations with a lot of data mesh people about this, that like there's a node on your mesh that is the EDW, right? Overseen by some sort of consolidation team, because it's just, sometimes you do want to move data together and really model it in a structured way that makes it very good at answering a bound set of questions. And so it drives me crazy when someone has a question that fits within those bounds and yet they don't know it's there, and they end up replicating it in a view or using a spreadsheet where they could have just pulled the data from the EDW.
Yeah.
And that's so that I know people have experienced that. We got a question here. This is from Richard Ashton on LinkedIn. He says, tech should always be a secondary consideration. Data should drive actions and decisions. The platform of delivery is kind of irrelevant. And I really agree. Like I talk to people about this a lot, and I have over the course of my career, is like, there's a temptation to buy new tech to try to solve existing problems that are really culture and process problems, not tech problems. And the one thing I will say, sometimes you do have a tech problem, right? Sometimes, and I'm curious if anyone else has experienced this, actually buying a new piece of tech is the door that opens the door to culture and process fixes,
Yeah.
like, oh, we're implementing the new BI tool. And so, we got to come up, since we're implementing this new BI tool, we're going to come up with we're going to embrace agile and enable people to do more self-service, for example. A very popular thing that happened over the course of the last decade as people moved from kind of the Cognos business objects era into the Tableau Power BI era, is you would say, oh, well, now that we're doing Tableau, like we're going to embrace self-service and decentralized visualization and report creation in a way that, they could have the whole time in their existing BI tools, but it's just the purchasing of a new tool opened the door to the cultural change.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, because it creates like a whole project, like for example, like, ripping out TM1, right? Or called planning analytics.
Yeah.
A silly name change, by the way, in my opinion. But like, for example, ripping out TM1 because there are all these problems with, how the organization is using it. But like in reality, TM1 can do all those things, just you don't have the resources who know how to do it or the process around it. So it feels like TM1 can't do anything.
Yeah.
And as part of this whole new project, you do get those resources. You do actually take time to document stuff. And it's like, oh, we've got this new system that we spent 2 years implementing that like does the things TM1 could have done, but we just got new technology.
Right. Yeah.
We were relying on new technology to try to solve our business process.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just,
in the process, maybe you do solve the business process, but that's because you did a 2-year project that cost $1 million.
and part of that project that you put into your project plan was like, we're going to spend some money figuring out a new way to do analytics at our organization.
Yeah.
Right. In a way that you could, like I said, you could have before. Many data problems are fundamentally people and process problems at the end of the day, and not technology problems. Now, not always, right? Like Like there are sometimes you do need new tech. The tech you have doesn't perform well enough, or the new tech enables a degree of agility, or
Like
has.
like having an independent semantic layer, which I would love to have. I don't have, but I would love to have it.
I'm
You know?
aware of a tool that offers that. What's it called? Um, yeah. So making decisions based solely on technology is a sign that your data project is doomed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What do we got next?
All right, let's go here. Next slide. Oh, I don't know why this header is so tiny, but it's not. This header is not less important. Trust me.
Yeah.
This is a funny one. Executives just got back from a conference.
That is
And
a for sure sign that your data project
Yep.
is doomed.
Like this is an example of making decisions solely based on technology and that rule of cool. I love doing cool stuff. But like the simple stuff works. Like I said earlier, like the boring stuff often works. Like you do the stuff you think is stupid. It's like the stupid, like, oh, just do this. It's like, it'll work sometimes. So executive just got back from a conference, so like applying a new trend without thorough research, right? Because, like, for example, like this is just like something that's going to come up, LLMs, right? They're great, but there are use cases they're not good for. And I'm going to talk about more of that later in one of these slides, I believe. Like, changing a project direction based on what's trendy rather than what's beneficial. And a big example of this, and I'm sure, Ryan, you've seen this a lot in 2010 to 20 whatever, when people realized it wasn't going to pan out so well. Hadoop, more like Hadon't, right? How much business value have you actually seen extracted from implementing Hadoop?
Yeah, I'm really curious too. If you're like, let us know in the chat your experience with this, because I worked at a place, and then as a consultant, I consulted with many clients who had on-prem data lakes and on-prem Hadoop, and I don't know that a single one of them got the value out of that investment. So let us know in the chat, like, well, I'm really curious. What was your experience with that? Like, did you have seen a really great, productive on-prem data lake? It just seems like really, in my mind, up until the lake house and the combination of a data lake with a data warehouse running on the cloud, it felt like for most companies, this technology was a huge waste of money. Not everybody, obviously.
Yeah.
The tech companies that Hadoop came out of, it was very successful. But when you went out into the hinterlands here in the Midwest and tried to deploy it, it didn't turn out the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A personal example is MongoDB. When I was in more of a web developer role, we used MongoDB. Why did we use MongoDB? Because I haven't learned, because at that point I had not learned any of the lessons we're talking about in this presentation, and MongoDB was in. Oh, SQL's dead. It's like, okay, well, for this project we'll use MongoDB. I mean, it worked okay, but like normal SQL relational would have just worked better, and I wouldn't have had to create like MapReduce pipelines in order to like do analytics, which ended up being slower than normal SQL joins. Like that's a personal example for me, right?
Are you talking about that software product you and I worked on together?
Yes.
Yeah. So in this case, the dumb executive who went to a conference and came back and said, we have to use this new technology was me.
Yes. And I was all for it. I didn't even know what was going on. Oh, let's see. We got
Paul. Good to see you, Paul. Yeah, Hadoop isn't often used now, but the term Spark is emphasized. It works well for telcos. For sure. I mean, it's evolved, right?
Yeah.
Into something that is actually useful, and you think about Spark. I mean, look at Databricks, for example. People are for sure getting value out of where this technology has evolved. But if you go back to, say, I had a client who invested $5 or $7 million or something to build out an on-prem data lake with Hortonworks back in 2015, 2016, and it was just a total disaster. They never got anything out of it. And so, but it oftentimes, it did evolve in a direction that became quite useful.
Yeah. yeah, like lessons learned, and then like as it evolved, like yeah, like Spark and Spark SQL, it's like used in lots of stuff.
But it's for sure the case that, I mean, and kind of the true confessions of data industry pros. Like I have been the person at the conference who's trying to convince your executive to spend money on technology that they don't need, right? It's just part of the game. But when the execs have just gotten back from a conference and they are raving about the cool demo they saw and saying, hey, we need to, whatever piece of technology it is, we need to invest in it. And here, let me introduce you to our the sales rep I met in Miami over drinks. It's a sign that your upcoming data project is doomed.
Oh, joining from Berlin. Wie geht es Ihnen?
Yeah, guten Abend.
Yeah. Yeah, we both took German in high school. It's been a while, so don't quiz us. But
we both speak like 2.5-year-old level German.
that might be a little gracious towards us to say that. You know,
Ich komme mit dem Bus. I'll never forget that.
Ich komme zur Schule mit dem Bus. Tennis ist mein Lieblingssport.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I remember. Anyway.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, executives pushing for quick wins, they're sustainable long-term solutions, that happens, like we were talking about, that might be a problem, pushing for quick wins based on some new tech, because I'm sure back in 2017, 2018 or whatever, there was lots of people saying, how are we going to implement, blockchain?
Yeah.
Right. It's like we do patio siding. We're not going to implement blockchain, but it's like, hey, it's a buzzword, so let's implement it. And it might be a problem if the exec plans on IBG YBG in 2 years. So I guess in the exec's I'll be gone and you'll be right here dealing with it.
Right.
And this all boils down to miscommunication or misunderstanding between executives and the technical team.
Yeah.
Right. Executives, they want results, and they think this last thing they saw is going to give those results, and the tech team maybe doesn't push back on it. They hear we're doing this because XYZ, and they say, okay, my job's to do stuff. You said do stuff. I'm going to do stuff. Right.
Yeah. And there's an element too, especially if you have a new executive, like what we often see is there is immense pressure on a new executive to change things. Right. Because obviously the old executive is no longer there for a reason. If that reason is that the old executive was really successful and moved on and up, right? That's one thing. But if you're an executive coming into a position where the person in that seat before you was let go because things weren't going well, there's this pressure to just do something new. And how do you justify doing something new? One of the easiest ways is to go out and purchase a new tech stack and say, look, this is what we're doing. My vision, please give me $10 million. I'm going to go buy all this software. I'm going to pay these outside consultants. They're going to come in and, we're going to implement this new thing. And you'll often see that happening. And I've witnessed it a couple of times where the new executive doesn't even take the time to kind of understand the current state. They really know what it is that they want to do, and they just come in and impose it. And I will tell you, that's not always bad, right?
No.
That's not always bad. Sometimes you have a visionary person or a person who has succeeded with a particular way of doing things, and they can bring those ideas in and make it work. But oftentimes that's not the case, because as we've said many times, what's way more important than the technology you use or whether you're bringing in McKinsey or EY to tell you what to do is the actual culture and practice of your data team and your organization. Yeah. And no amount of technology is going to change or fix that, except for insofar as we said earlier, sometimes buying a new piece of tech cracks open the door to making culture and process changes that you couldn't have made otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Let's see. All right, so another big potential fail point. And now remember, this is at the very beginning of the project, right? Where you can tell something. Oh, this is going to change. Oh, here we've got some comments we're going to talk about with the last slide real quick.
Okay.
Let's see. Make use of the hypes of execs to continue your journey. At least you can make use of his commitment and backing. You needed to give the vision and make use of him.
Right.
So I think what Robert is saying, it's like, if you find yourself in this situation where you're implementing the latest new tech, even if it doesn't make sense, I guess from from an organization point of view, it could be bad, but from an individual point of view, that could be quite good, right? if like, oh yeah, I implemented this hottest new tech, then yeah, that could be pretty good. And then Joe O'Brien,
Friend of the show.
a true friend, yeah, a big friend of the show. The rules of project funding have changed as well. It used to be 18 to 24-month payback was standard. Now we need to show less than 12-month payback to get funded in many cases.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's especially true, as we've talked about on this show and as you see on, if you follow anybody's show, kind of the big change that happened in maybe October of last year when suddenly interest rates got high enough that money wasn't free anymore. And suddenly, data projects are really being asked to justify themselves with a much more aggressive payback period, like you say, Joe, among other things. And definitely the days of, we're going to implement this cool tech and we don't know what the payback period is, but we're going to do it just to do it. Like those days are way over for the time being. And I say good riddance to them.
Yeah. All right. So next failure point, not planning for change, right? So, not preparing for potential disruptions or shift in market trends. And, we talk about BI analytics. It's Super Data Brothers, but, we're practically the super business intelligence brothers.
Practically.
Practically, but no one else is really talking about that stuff. So that's why we're such a primo show, by the way. But like a recent example of not preparing for change, that every single BI vendor is just like instantly pivoting to try to implement. And we've talked about it on the show a lot because it comes up every single episode, no matter what, large language models, right? Every single vendor is implementing large language models in one way or another, right? Like I just saw IBM just had a presentation about they're releasing Cognos 12, right? From Cognos 11. And one of the things they're highlighting is their new user query chat, which as an aside, didn't really seem like large language models. Like I see why they're pushing it, but they're not really pivoting to it, but
yeah,
that's so. That's so. So another thing, no change management plan. And this goes back to earlier we were saying like the simple stuff works, right? So like honestly, like if you just Google change management plan and look at the top 3 results and see what they say, and in some way implement those things, you're already just the fact that you're even trying puts you miles ahead, right? Diagram what you're going to do, plan what you're going to do, a Gantt chart, a simple like project plan Gantt chart will bring you miles ahead. Another thing, overlooking the impact of changes on team roles and responsibilities, right? So
yeah,
that basically, because
it's the people, right? Are you thinking about the people who actually have to carry out this data program long term? That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And this last point too, I love neglecting to update your project plan in response to feedback or results. So begin with the end in mind, we always say. What does that mean in the context of a data project? It does not mean begin with your final design already in place and build that no matter what. That's not what begin with the end in mind means. It means begin with the value you're going to deliver in mind, right?
Yeah.
And then be ready to change your mind as you go in order to maximize that value.
Yeah, like Robert's saying, sounds like the old-fashioned project management, right? Well, no, we're not talking about like doing like a waterfall project, right? Where we're like design each phase and have all the requirements. This is not old school, requirements. Hey, here are a bunch of requirements. Let's just hire a bunch of people to implement the requirements. When we say start with the end in mind, yeah, like you said, Ryan, we really mean like, what do you plan on actually getting out of this? How does this? I think someone we used to work with, Chris used to say, like, when he was trying to like sell like trying to create personas of people, is like, how does this make my job easier?
Yeah.
How does it make my job easier? How does it prevent me from getting yelled at?
Yeah.
Like
At the end of the day.
Yeah. How does this make my job easier? How does this prevent me from getting yelled at? It's like how does that work into your like overall plan? Like, so if you're trying to like implement something, like those are like big questions. So like, yeah, that's a good point, Robert. But
You know what's funny too? You mentioned like waterfall. I have seen in the LinkedIn chatter some like waterfall is back.
Really?
Stuff. Yeah. I mean, I guess
I
if
think
we're gonna rerun 2008, like if we're just gonna play that record back, cool. At least I'm familiar with all that stuff, so I'm comfortable.
yeah, I think there's a balance. I feel like unless you're building rocket ships, you don't
Yeah.
really need a true waterfall.
Well, it's like what Robert says here, right?
Yeah.
The balance. It's the balance.
Agile versus waterfall. Yeah.
What were they calling it? Wagile, I think Chris Tabb was calling it.
Wagile. It sounds like agile, but you cry about it a lot. Wagile project.
Sometimes agile does make you cry a lot.
Well, if you have with every single day is the daily Scrum stand up that doesn't serve anybody. It feels like a Wagile.
It's brutal. And it's like, oh, we're doing agile, we're doing Scrum. Okay, who's the Scrum master? Oh, there is no Scrum master. Who's writing the stories? Well, we're not doing that part. We didn't get the funding for the user stories.
All we're doing is meeting every morning.
All we're doing is having a meeting every day. It's like, kill me. This is a friend of the show, Tom Wilczek. I definitely agree on new tech. Where Tom is right now, they're using new tech to also drive policy changes. So I mean, it's a really weird thing, but it's true. Like it just, and in some ways, it's almost like I recognize the reality of this, and it's kind of, I mean, it's weird. It's kind of stupid, right? In a way, to say like, well, why do we got to spend $2 million on this new stuff if our problem is culture, practice, strategy, and process, right? If those are our problems, why do we got to buy these new tools? But the reality is, just in a lot of organizations, that's when the money is flowing. And also that's when you're allowed to step back from your operational role and say, like I think about, in fact, Tom and I worked on a Cognos upgrade 12 years ago. That's how we met. And that's where you get to say, for example, we're pausing all new report development for 6 months while we upgrade the BI system, right? Now, nowadays, you should be using a more modern BI tool that doesn't take 6 months to upgrade.
Hopefully.
Maybe one that's kind of based on code and ropes in some DevOps principles where you can treat it more like a piece of software and upgrade more quickly. But my point being, your operational concerns, you're relieved of them often.
Yeah. Oh, did we lose Ryan? Oh, I think we lost Ryan. Here, hold on one sec. Let's see if we got. Gonna get Ryan back. Here.
Time.
Here, maybe you can let us know in the comments. Is Ryan pausing out and lagging, or am I lagging and I'm just disappearing? Yeah, internet problems.
Can you hear me?
Are you back, Ryan?
Back. I don't know what the heck just happened there. It's funny. It's like you have an unstable connection, and like I'm hardwired in. I don't know.
Yeah, that unstable connection is called Comcast.
Yeah, and it costs me $120 a month. Okay, What were
Okay,
we
Ryan.
talking
I'm
about?
seeing Ryan back. So if I think we should be good. If Ryan's still
Yeah.
lagging out, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, let us know if you can see me. But
Yeah.
I should be here.
All right. I think we're back because I can
Yeah.
see you. I
Okay.
can see
Well,
you. I think we're back.
let's just keep rolling.
Let's
And,
keep rolling. Okay, we're back. We are good. Thank you, John.
Okay. Cool. Well then,
What were we talking about?
what were we talking about? I was just making the point of I think I was going off on a rant about using technology to make cultural changes, and it's silly that we have to do that, but like at the same time, I recognize that is a reality.
Mhm.
And so lean into it. Like if you're making, here's my advice: if you're making a big technology change, don't let the opportunity to
Yep.
revamp your culture and practice pass you by.
Use it as a catalyst.
Exactly.
I think that's especially true because it seems like a lot of the new technology is about, as we're saying, visibility, right? Or observability. Is that what they're called? Is that the term we're using? Observability of the
Yeah.
data, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the new technologies, like the stuff they're trying to sell you, is hey, you can actually tell what the heck's going on.
Right.
Kind of a double bonus if you're going to implement it anyways. Like it's built in.
It's actually a very interesting point because there's two things that I feel like are going on right now, right? Like one of them is so we talk a lot about this show about the supply chain era of analytics and this hairball of data pipelines that people have built, and so part of the observability thing is like giving you the tools to tell to like peer into the hairball and tell what the hell is going on, right?
Mhm.
That's one trend, right? So that's the technological solution to the hairball. The other solution is like this return of, well, maybe we should be building more robust metadata models, right? Maybe we should have a not a single source of truth, but there should at least be a source of truth, right?
Yeah.
For
A starting point to find the truth.
to find the truth, right? And that's something that a lot of data teams, just to one degree or another, got away from. And so it's kind of like, how do you choose to address this problem by getting better observability into the crazy data mess that you've built, or by changing your data practice and getting more robust, trustable
Mhm.
sources of data and metadata models. Um, it looks like we've got a reunion going on in the chat.
Yeah. Hey, a long time no see.
Yeah. I did want to bring up here I lost it because I had to reload. Well, never
Which
mind.
one was it?
The
I can
Tom
bring it up.
Wilsack's comment about the number one thing was just change management.
Let's see. Is it this one?
Yeah, so this is Tom Wilsack again. I'd argue no change management plan is far and away the number one reason your data project is doomed. To me, it all starts there. If that had been the only bullet point today, I would have been fine with it. So it's good to know we got your number one on
There we
on the
go.
list there, Tom.
All right. So this is our fifth point. Hiring consultants solely based on resumes. And this is not necessarily just consultants, but this is mainly where you see problems, because if you've got a full-time employee, you generally know them a little bit better. So you relied on the resume, essentially, right? So you didn't validate the consultant's experience or skills, right? So I'm sure I've seen this. You've seen this, Ryan, where you get these resumes,
Yep.
and wouldn't you believe it, this person has done everything under the sun, right? They can do all the things. They matched all the keywords,
Yes.
right? And especially if you're working with, like, in my opinion, the larger firms, a lot of times they'll send you anybody, right? So what's one remedy to that? Now, obviously, me and Ryan are biased because we came from a small firm and we saw the messes big firms left that we were hired to clean up. So consider smaller firms. So if you have a specific technological need, find a firm that does just that, right? Avoid the big houses that do literally everything, because the big houses that do literally everything will tell you they can do everything,
Yeah.
whether they can or not. small firms, boutique firms that specialize in a specific area, you might be better off there. And here's another thing in my experience. If you are going to pick one of these larger firms, because it's just easier to have a relationship with a large consulting or contracting house, and then just, okay, we need all these people, send us resumes, right? In my experience is reject readily. Don't be afraid if you had 5 interviews. I know it's grueling. I've done it. If you have 5 interviews with contractors / consultants, right? And none of them, you talk to them and none of them seem like the resume seems fine, but like it's just not talking to them. It doesn't seem they really will fit in. Like they don't really know what you're looking for or how to fit themselves into that vision. Reject them, right? Say, give me some more. Because other things like with these big firms, like if you accept anyone they send you, they'll send you anyone.
Yeah.
Right? Because they want to put someone at your company, right?
It's about butts and seats.
It's about butts and seats. But like on some level, if they know you're picky, you might start to get the better resources, right? Mm-hmm. If you keep on rejecting people. Because if they can place someone that's like a resource they're not paying very much, essentially, and they know you'll take anybody, they'll give you anybody. So validate the consultant's experience, talk to them, be ready to reject. That's if you need contractors and consultants for your internal project. Which brings me to the next point. Another problem, ignoring your current talent pool, right? So what's better? Taking a gamble on a resume that looks good, right? And maybe even talking to the person, they seem to be fairly knowledgeable. Or maybe you have someone inside your organization that, it does something maybe adjacent. Maybe they're trained on one specific tool or something, and this is project using a new tool or a new methodology. Then like a known resource who you can skill up and is reliable and has delivered results in the past is 100% better than a resume that passed the robot. That the resume robot said, you're good to go. So like, don't ignore your internal talent pool. And I mean, the last point for hiring consultants is like, we're talking about technology stuff, but like we were also earlier talking about business process, right? And how do you implement a good business process? How do you work with the end users? It's the soft skills, it's the Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People skills.
Yeah. The most influential data book of 2023.
Yeah. How to win friends and influence people, So don't ignore those skills, having something like that on the project. So those are kind of like my main points if I were to talk about like hiring for the project. Like,
yeah,
don't just get a bunch of resumes saying, yeah, seems good. Like care about that. Like have a team, try to cultivate a team that cares. Mm-hmm. I guess what it boils down to, cultivate a team that cares.
And I think like this is an area too, where, I can speak from personal experience, having been on a lot of projects. You mentioned our small firm bias. Yeah, but I've been on a lot of projects where I'm maybe have been working in conjunction with people from a big firm. And it's been, especially when I think back to like my Cognos implementation days.
Oh, geez.
It was so clear within 5 minutes of working with someone that this person's resume was fabricated. Mm-hmm. Like there's no way that they actually know, because you look at the resume and it's like, this person is a transformer guru. And then you watch them open Transformer and they don't know where the buttons are.
Yeah.
Like I've seen that sort of stuff happen. Right. And so, I mean, again, we're biased towards smaller firms because we both come out of a smaller firm. But, you really do need to, I think the picking the right people, in my mind, is the most important success factor in either a data project or building a long-term data practice, right? Is the stuff you have on here. And especially in the data world, I prize soft skills, adaptability, and problem solving over hard technical skills, like in almost all situations. You do need to have, I think a data team needs to have that killer engineer who can solve like the really tough problems. Like that's an important thing to have. But a team of just those people, I think, is a less successful team.
Yeah.
And it's because data, like, especially as you move up the stack and you get closer and closer to BI, it's more and more about the people we're building things for their objectives, what will move the needle for them, what do they understand as the key what do they understand the value of a data project to be, and how do we translate that into something we can build, right? And that is not a question that can be answered by how great you are at writing complex SQL, right? Or
Mhm.
how large and complicated of a DBT model can you construct? Building the right thing is the most important thing in data. And so, that's a big piece of it. And so that you can't tell that from a resume. I mean, if I've like, I feel like this is getting less possible over time. And I'm also kind of showing a little bit of, my bias towards my own background, but like, I'm always very interested when I see a resume and it's like, I was a music major and now
Mm.
I'm an analytics consultant, because that tells me that this is a person who is well-rounded and understands more than just technology, and maybe does understand people, and that's so important in data, um, especially the world you and I play in, which is more the business intelligence piece
Yeah.
than it is just the hardcore setting up data pipelines.
Yeah.
And it's harder to find, I think, because now you can actually study data. Like, back in when I was going to college, I don't know that, like, I mean, you see lots of people nowadays who have bachelor's degrees or master's degrees in analytics, and none of that stuff
Yeah, that didn't
existed
exist.
in
Yeah.
2001. Um,
Yeah.
and
The way you learned that was by getting hired to do it.
yeah,
You
it
know,
was.
now you can
That
actually
was really it.
learn on it.
But the
You know.
soft skills, like, they're so important in data, and so don't overlook them when it comes to ensuring that your data project is not doomed.
Hmm. Okay, so we're coming to near the end of the hour. I think we've got like
Yeah.
6 minutes left. So
Mhm.
if you have any questions or comments you want to bring up in the chat, go ahead and bring them up now, and we can talk about it. Now, this could be from anything. Let's see, I hire theater majors exclusively.
That's how you can tell someone knows us well, right there.
Uh-huh. Was it because you were a theater major, Ryan?
It is because I was a theater major, and Joe actually did hire me once.
That's true.
That was my first. So Joe and I worked together at Oracle. That was my first sales engineering job.
Hmm.
Was working for Joe at Oracle, and then he left us for Tableau.
Hmm.
But yeah, so the one thing I wanted to point out here, let me just bring this up here. So be sure to join us. We need to start promoting this here. If you are interested, one thing where you can talk about all these topics and more with the Super Data Brothers live is
In
if you
person.
it live in person. You can actually meet us. Join us at Data Day Texas 2024.
Hmm.
So this is an awesome conference that Eric and I will be presenting at. We went to it last year. We loved it. There's a bunch of really cool people there. This is very different from the major vendor conferences that you're probably used to going to. This is almost exclusively practitioners. The presentations are by practitioners for the most part, who it's all very hands-on experience, very practical, great conversations. It's got a great community feel. It's a one-day only event on January 27th, 2024. Check it out at datadaytexas.com and register with the code Super Data Brothers, all one word, to get 20% off your registration. We need to start promoting that. I wonder if do they have our picture up on here yet? I don't know. Yeah, there's me. I'll have them add you.
Okay.
Cool. So be sure to check that out. Again, that's Super Data Brothers That is Super Data Brothers, one word in the code to get 20% off. But I mean, you look at like Shantona. She's actually going to be on our show next week, I believe.
Yeah. That's actually promo for next week. We're actually having a discussion with her next week for our show.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to that. Like, I have so many. Sometimes we have guests on the show who are like Ina Sella, for example. Sometimes we have guests on the show where I'm like, this person is so much smarter than me. And Shantona is one of those people. Well, I'm really looking forward to having her on. Here we got a comment. One of the best hires I ever made was a music history major. Absolutely. Yeah, don't sleep on those on your humanities students out there. They can be good data people. All right.
I think we're about at the top of the hour.
Yep, we're just about the top of the hour. Here's a quote from Paul, right? The content, the data itself being more important than specific technology. He thinks it applies to LLMs, prompt engineering, the direction AI is headed. In his view, that it's all about the inherent thinginess of it, is I think how I would put this, right? Yeah, well, that's really like it is. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it is about what you can do, right? And it not insofar as what the technology can do, but like what can you do using it, and what can you do for other people, and what can they do with your enablement? The LLM thing, I think this is the least we've talked about LLMs on an episode in like 6 weeks.
That's true.
But it's very, that will be a big piece of it too. I mean, and it's like, obviously OpenAI and ChatGPT is very cool right now. But fundamentally, it is about the thinginess, right? The essence of the thing is what is important, and less like it's less about this technology versus that one. I mean, at the end of the day, is many technologies can do what you need, and what matters is what you do with them, right? It's like my high school yearbook quote I remember was, "Deeds in life matter more than words." This is a very high school yearbook quote thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think mine was something like, "Gary was here, Ash is a loser," which is a quote from Pokemon.
Then that's the difference between those two Super Data brothers.
You were a theater kid, and I was always in tech.
And you're a troll. A born troll. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Wrap it up there. Thinginess for the win. Absolutely, Paul. All right. So until next week, where we have, again, don't miss next week's show. We're going to have Shantona on. I am so pumped for that. I cannot wait to talk to her. I just see her all the time. Follow her on LinkedIn. It's just one of those things, like every single thing I ever see her doing, I'm like, God damn, that was smart. And so really excited to have her on. So tune in next week, same time, 12 o'clock Eastern Daylight Savings Time, for our next Super Data show.
All right.
And until then, goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Talk to you later.